What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here, and today I'm joined by writer and director Jim Muntisov to discuss their new short film, Welcome to the Cyber Rodeo. The film follows a Y2K-styled mechanical bull rider known as the Cyber Cowboy, whose brief conversation with a bartender begins to reveal the person behind this carefully constructed persona. Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, cowboys are often associated with independence, stoicism, self-reliance. But your cyber cowboy is surprisingly vulnerable and reflective. What made the cowboy archetype feel right for the lens through which you wanted to explore this character?
Ooh, I guess I think we see like cowboys in media as like very kind of I guess like introverted and they're not really like opening up and they're very like uh closed off. And it feels like a facade sometimes. I think it's as a way of kind of avoiding confrontation. And I think I liked the idea of having someone create this persona where they could go to this space and do this thing and kind of be solitary in that. But then sort of have that facade broken when someone actually tries to like connect with them, and they realize like, oh, like I can have this like, you know, connection with someone who can see me as who I am.
And Joseph Lim gives a very layered performance here because, the cyber cowboy simultaneously, they're a persona, they're a fantasy, and they're a very real person. So you've collaborated with Joseph before on Gem. So what made the right person for this role, and how has your creative partnership evolved over the projects?
Yeah, so I've known Joseph for many years, and he's been a really interesting person to work with because we worked together in retail. That's where we first met, and he wasn't pursuing acting, but um, we collaborated on Gem, and like he just brought a really, really like nuanced performance in that film, and I knew I wanted to work with him again, and I needed someone who could have like you could see the kind of layers like being peeled away in like real time, as they sort of start to like recognize like, oh, I'm like having this connection with this person. But then also in some of the sort of flashback sequences, like, you know, there's a lot of unsaid things that are sort of playing out and you like he can just get across these like tiny little emotions just on his face. And I'm like, this is like the exact type of person we need, for this character. So it's kind of a no-brainer. I didn't even, I just asked like, hey, do you want to be in this movie? And it was like, great.
And so you talk about that with the flashbacks and the different pieces with this film. So it has
Mm,
a wonderfully textured visual style. It blends like grainy imagery, the camcorder footage, the screen recordings, and references to older media, right? Even the title card immediately establishes this kind of nostalgic, dreamlike atmosphere. So how did you develop that visual
mm.
language, and what did it allow you to express about the cyber cowboy that maybe a more traditional approach couldn't do?
I guess I think like, I mean, there's a lot of trial and error in the edit. Um, I like working with mixed media because I think, yeah, it does add this sort of layer of texture to like a narrative. I've always found it really fascinating when you watch films that do jump between different mediums to kind of showcase like different elements of a person's life or like a different time period. And I think because this film kind of draws on like nostalgia as this kind of way of like the Cyber Cowboys kind of creating this persona out of their love of these things from their childhood or when they were growing up, and they've kind of created this almost like shield for themselves. It was a nice like way of bringing in these different things, like the video game footage and the camcorder and the old like Western movies and stuff. That's like you kind of feel like a life lived. These are all like elements that like really influence this person. And I guess it was just, yeah, trying to see how that could all cut together in the edit and whether it would flow, because I think that's the hardest part of doing this type of film is just hoping that it doesn't feel jarring and like finding the right pacing for it and finding like how you can intercut that without it feeling like, yeah, I guess too jarring. But I think it came together well. I mean, I feel yeah.
Now, the conversation between the cowboy and the bartender, it's brief, but it becomes surprisingly meaningful. What interested you about exploring a connection through such a small, seemingly ordinary interaction?
I think like I guess with the story, I really wanted someone to kind of just approach them not as like a I guess like earlier in the film there's someone who kind of yells out like from the bar like yeah Cyber Cowboy, which is kind of more of this like oh we like your aesthetic, we like your vibe, you're this kind of iconic figure, and to have someone kind of come in and kind of cut into that knowing that there's like a person behind that and come in from a place of empathy, and it's someone who's like been working a long shift, is like had a lot of shit going on, just kind of wants to like shoot the shit, and sort of sees like a someone who like the bartender thinks they can connect with. They're like, I sort of see you, so I'm gonna like prod a little bit and see if I can get anything out of you. um, so they're kind of going gently, and then ultimately you're able to kind of bring a little bit out of the cowboy, and yeah.
Nice. And as you continue developing projects as a writer and a director, this is one question I love to ask filmmakers when I chat with them. What would you say is one best practice that you've learned that you'll carry with you into your future projects and your one learning curve that you try to avoid?
I think honestly, and I guess it's also like the learning curve thing as well. Like, don't overthink everything. I think in the past, like when I've been piecing films together, it's like so easy to get in your head about like, what is the point of this story? Like, is this going to connect with anyone? Like, it's very easy to overwrite stuff and like because you're getting too in like the weeds, but to kind of just like get an idea out and be like, okay, I have this idea for something. Let me just like write a bunch of random stuff about it. It doesn't have to be like, the full plot structure. It doesn't have to be like, it's like it's just a vibe. It's like a feeling. Like just work with that and write as much as you want. And just, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least you've kind of like put all of that out there in some form. And then you might, in 6 months' time, revisit it and be like, oh, actually, it was on something really interesting here. There's like something here. There's like a nugget of, something. And just to like kind of, you can have all these like different ideas, and you just keep them aside for later because you might be in the mood to do something one day, and then the other day you're like, I want to do something completely different. So I think the big thing that I've been learning is just to like not like if I'm feeling stuck, don't sort of discount anything that you've kind of like worked on before because you're like, oh, this one core idea that I think is going to be my next big thing is like not feeling right, or it's not working. I can't figure out the structure. It's like just move on to something else, something else that might seem like less important, or more trivial, or like more silly, something completely different genre, but like you can kind of be creative in that for a while, and then in a few months, yeah, you might want to revisit that thing and be like, oh, I'm fully on track with that. So yeah, just I think, yeah, to summarize, having like multiple projects running at the same time, and just being very fluid with when you're working on each one.
And when audiences leave, welcome to the Cyber Rodeo. What is something you hope stays with them emotionally or intellectually afterward?
I don't know, something about the idea that like everyone is sounds silly, but like everyone is like a person, underneath the facade, you like meet all these people, but like, you know, people have like fully fleshed out lives that we don't see. And, you know, I don't know, just like treat people with like empathy, I guess. Yeah.
Fair point. And one fun one. What have
Mm.
your experiences been like riding a mechanical bull?
So back, I think like six months before we started filming, I brought Joseph to there's only one mechanical bull in Melbourne. So we went to this bull, and I was like, okay, 6 months ahead of time, I'm like, we're gonna need you to get on this bull, and you need to train. You need to be really good at this. And I get on because I'm like, all right, I'll give it a go. I'm probably gonna be like really good. I literally fly off in the first second. It's like embarrassing. There's a video of me just on it, and I'm just like whoop, straight off.
Yep.
So I was terrible. Joseph gets on. That's like the longest ride of anyone who's been there all night. And I'm just like, oh, great. We don't have to train you at all. You've never done this before, and you're just like a natural. Um, but I've since revisited the bull, and I'm getting a little bit better. But yeah, so I think the longest ride I did was like 30 seconds. But I was probably on the easy difficulty.
Well, Jim, thank you again so much for taking the time to speak with me today, and congratulations on Welcome to the Cyber Rodeos. As always, if you enjoyed this conversation, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more filmmaker interviews, festival coverage, spoiler-free reviews, and award season conversations. Until then, this is Cinephile Mike saying take a break and watch something new. Jim, have a great day.